I am so excited today to introduce a friend of mine, Nick Pineault. He is a powerful force in helping us to understand something that doesn't seem like it's actually an issue because it's something that we can't feel it, we don't sense it in any way, but it is the issue, very real, of increasing exposure to electromagnetic fields, or EMFs. And so I'm going to just let Nick talk about what he has to share around this, because like so many things related to wellness, this has to do with our ability to educate ourselves and move forward in an educated manner. And so, Nick, I am so thrilled to have you here to share with everyone on this really kind of seemingly quiet but very powerful subject of EMFs.
Thank you, Sarika. Thanks for having me. So I want to preface just explaining a little bit what EMFs are. And it's really simple to understand in a sense, and it's very complicated also. So electromagnetic signals, most of them we don't see. And it's been everywhere in nature since day one, since the beginning of Earth. For example, well, the sun emits something called UV radiation, right? UV light we don't see. And yet we can sense that there's an effect, because when you get just enough UV light, you get a little tan and you get vitamin D. We know how good this is for your body. It actually helps you fight cancer, immunity, calcium in your body is absorbed better. So there's so many benefits we know. And we know that, though, if you get in the sun and you stay too much UV is a bad thing. You can get skin damage, melanoma, and these kind of problems you want to avoid when you get sunburn, right? So this is a natural kind of EMF, UV radiation. But nowadays, and especially in the last 15 years, we're now exposed to new types of artificial EMFs, if you will. EMFs are signals that we use to communicate wirelessly. So I'm talking about smartphones, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cell phone towers, sensors everywhere. Everything that is wireless emits an EMF to communicate. But these EMFs have never been seen before in nature. So, for example, and that's such a staggering number, most people don't even comprehend what it is, but the comparison between the levels of this radiation we call microwave radiation from your cell phone, for example, what's the level here in Montreal as I'm looking towards the window versus Mother Nature, or what our ancestors were exposed to in the 70s, in the 50s. I'm talking about ancestors. I mean, it's my parents. it's not the ancestor, but even ancestrally. So when you look at, okay, the original man were exposed to almost nothing. Well, it's a quintillion times higher these days. So it's 10 to the 18, the exposure that we have. Now, the question is it doing something, all these EMFs? Because in nature, all other kinds of EMFs have an effect. Well, and the answer is probably yes, unfortunately for us, because, well, let's face it, we all have a cell phone. Most people own 4 to 5 devices. They have the iPad. They have now a smart TV connected to everything, a set of Bluetooth speakers. So it's really a question of now we're overexposed to these EMFs. And a lot of people, when they learn about that, they're like, oh, wait a minute, this is concerning, because what can I do about a cell phone tower in the street? What can I do, right? But you got to concentrate on what you can do at home and with your own devices, because it turns out that the biggest exposure that you face as a person comes from your own stuff. The iPhone that you pay $1,000 for, you pay $100 every month, you pay for your Wi-Fi router at home, and it's these devices that expose you the most. So it's actually, the good news is that you can change and can do something about it.
That is the best part right there, because the way that you frame that, the
Yes.
quintillion, I mean, like, who talks about quintillions? Not even for the American debt do we talk in quintillions. And so that is, I love the way you frame that. And I love the way you put it into the context of radiation waves affect us in other ways. And so we can pretty much expect that they're going to be affecting us in these ways that are so new on the scene. I mean, as I was thinking about this, I'm completing my doctorate in acupuncture and Chinese medicine right now. And when I was getting my master's degree in this, that was nearly 20 years ago, the idea of having a remote learning, which is what I'm doing this time. I live in Northern Arizona. The learning is happening in San Diego, but I'm totally plugged into it. That wasn't even an option. That was not an option. And that was only 20 years ago. So when we look at this incredible evolution, and with Naturally Living Today, so often I talk about the evolution of how we brought processed foods in, and how can we expect our bodies to acclimate to this influx of new information of too many processed foods.
Right.
That does not hold a candle to what we were talking about when we start speaking in terms of quintillion. And again, Nick, I mean, the thing is it's an insidious potential, because it's something that doesn't seem to have an overt sensation on our body. And I think that the research is just barely coming on board, to allow for this.
Definitely.
And understanding. But I also love what you say, that so much of what we can do is actually modify our own behavior and the tools that we do use. And so can you share just a little bit about that, and
Sure.
how you can share more broadly on that too?
Sure. Well, there are a couple of rules you want to use. If you want to reduce your EMFs exposure by 90%, it's kind of easy. It's just creating distance and reducing time of use. So creating distance, what does that mean? Well, I have my cell phone right here. So if I'm using it right here, I have 100% of the radiation, right? At 1 foot, it drops off by 80%, and 2 feet, it's 90%. So it means that it will exponentially decrease with the square of the distance. So if you're at 3 feet from your cell phone, you barely are exposed to nothing compared to what you would be right next to your head. So the danger zone is when you have a cell phone emitting constantly. So whether you're talking on it or not, it's emitting, it's pinging the tower. So if you keep it here, or in your bra, or in your pocket, or anywhere near your body while you go away with your day, while you're working, or even while you sleep, because a lot of people have a cell phone under the pillow, well, it's constantly emitting, and you basically are exposed to needless amounts of radiation. So for example, you could use these earbuds, for example, and create distance and have the phone in your hand. And most people that do that are heavy users will also avoid the possible brain cancer risks that come with it, because even though the link is controversial, the latest research shows that every year you use a cell phone and that you're a heavy user. So I think it's anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours per day. So it's people who maybe use cell phone as part of their job, they might increase their risk 8% per year of different types of brain cancer. So it is substantial, and especially in teenagers and children. And that the thing is, their head is smaller, and it also contains more water, so it actually absorbs more radiation. So the technology has never been tested in children, and this is really what concerns me as a almost new dad. So we give children smartphones as toys, right? So it's not something that should be considered a toy, and try to make sure to hit airplane mode as often as you can. So it's reducing time of use, creating distance. And then if you carry it in your bra or in your pocket, maybe you're on a run and you love listening to your music, Spotify, it's all good, but hit airplane mode. And on top of that, you won't be bothered by the pinging and notifications that might kind of throw you off your rhythm, right? So it's just the way you use technology. And one thing that I'll share, there are so many things at home that you can do, right? It gets overwhelming, but the number one kind of electronic and EMF emitting machine to tame would be your Wi-Fi router, because this thing throws Wi-Fi in all the rooms in your place, right? This is how it works. And some of them have 5 antennas now, super high coverage. So it's the higher speed that you have, the higher coverage, the higher you're proud of this router. Oh yes, it performs so well. Well, it increases the radiation. So if you can have just good enough, so choosing a connectivity that maybe mine at home is 25 Mbps. Some people choose 1000 Mbps these days, and they're like, oh, this is blazing fast, but it comes with a price. So choosing your connection, and on top of that, you'll save every month. You do not need download speeds that are humongous that much, unless most people don't. It's actually just inconvenient because everything is so fast, right? Downloading a HD movie in a couple minutes, but so that's one thing. And after that, you want to look at your sleep. So when you go to sleep, you do not need Wi-Fi. And this is just maybe encouraging your teenagers to use Wi-Fi in the middle of the night, to check out the social media. And so turn off the Wi-Fi before you go to bed. And that way your body won't have this exposure at night. And EMFs from Wi-Fi and from cell phones, all these EMFs have been linked with melatonin disruption. And that's your most important sleep hormone. And also it is a cancer fighting hormone. So if you do not have it, if you're disrupted, you're participating in ill health and in having less deep sleep. So what does that mean? Well, you wake up in the morning. How come I slept for 8 hours? I don't feel restored. I don't feel fresh. Well, it's part of the reason. It's a factor that's constantly pinging in your direction, only you don't realize that it's there because it's invisible, right? So it's kind of a tricky one, but make sure to remove these devices from your bedroom. And just after a couple of nights, I know you'll feel difference if you used to be sleeping with your cell phone near the bedside and all of a sudden you turn it airplane mode. It will be a world of difference.
You know, it absolutely is. That's a pattern that we got into a number of years ago. We've always had the Wi-Fi router available on a power strip. So other things get shut off at the same time when we shut it down for the night. And we shut off our phones. We don't even bother with airplane mode. I don't want that noise in the house. And it's something that on top of this exposure that we're talking about, there's absolutely that aspect. But just as you say, these pings, you know, occasionally someone will forget to turn off their phone and I'll hear a ping in the middle of the night and it pulls me straight out of sleep, you know, and then I'm mad.
Sure. Yeah, I would be.
You know, because I'm used to having such a quiet home, like quiet in all ways when we sleep. And, you know, it's reckoned that the body heals about 7 times more effectively when we're sleeping. And so anything that we can do to reinforce that very important part of our human experience is so darned important. And I love what you said about not maximizing, you know, our beats per second that we are, you know, paying for with downloading and the like. So very simple things. I mean, because I know people who have had electricians come into their home and completely revert back to all landline. And they love the way that feels, but that's an expense to do that. It's a hassle in ways that, you know, let's be honest, most of us have gotten kind of used to the convenience of living this way. But I think you're spot on though, that we have to manage it. And I mean, the thing is I know as soon as we turn off our Wi-Fi and I go to my phone will automatically look for the next Wi-Fi that it could maybe connect to. So I see that, you know, in spite of having turned it off at home, we're still having a lesser grade exposure from all the Wi-Fi in the neighbors' homes around us. But as you say, it's a matter of degree of exposure. And you know, and you have some people who are highly, highly sensitive to this issue. They feel it already without these kind of cumulative chronic exposure issues of, you know, cancers that can form over years. You know, so everybody's going to be a little bit different that way. But I think you're spot on with, you know, the simple ways that we can reduce our exposure. And then the other really fantastic thing is obviously you have so committed your life to this, and what a terrific thing, because you're about to have a baby, and congratulations.
Thank you.
That's so good. And there's nothing like parenthood to make you get real about stuff. You know, you can do silliness with yourself, but when you become a parent, I think that it really drives you to want to do the best you can for your family. And so I know you have some amazing tools that you want to share with us so people can better understand this. So let us know what those are.
Sure. So first I have a book. I wrote a book. It's called, it has a humorous title, The Non-Tinfoil Guide to EMFs. So why did I call it that? Well, most people think, there's a saying, oh, this is tinfoil hatter stuff. This is a non-issue, or this is for crazy people who believe in extraterrestrials and these kind of fringe topics. But in reality, there's so much science behind the idea that we should reduce exposure, so much that France and Israel and different countries are reducing the levels. They're actively, for example, France has decided in September 2018, this coming September, they will ban all smartphones in schools. So children all across the country will have to check in their phone when they enter, just like you would have a metal detector in poor neighborhoods in the States. It's that crazy. And it's not necessarily, it's both because of EMFs and distraction and anxiety and social aspect to it. So it's a problem. I mean, even the tech executives that have created the iPhone and Google and Facebook now are all saying, we regret the addiction that we've created with technology. So even them are trying to have to rethink technology in a more humane way. But in the meantime, there's damage that's done to our kids and to ourselves because our attention span is so reduced. And so it's a question, it goes beyond EMF, but my book is all about, okay, how can you handle your phone, what to do at home, and what's the science behind it? The science is explained in very, very simple terms. You can skim through it if you don't. If you love the science, go ahead and read every page. But if not, it's just knowing that there is credible science behind it. And it's written in a very easy to understand language, because I found that even I, as a health journalist, I had a hard time understanding the books out there about EMFs. So I figured the average person, I mean, my wife will not read a single book about EMFs, and mine maybe. and that's because she's my business partner and she did the graphic design, among other things, and strategy. But anyhow, I didn't want to create something that my mom couldn't read, because it's tedious to read about that. So the Non-Tinfoil Guide to EMFs, and you can find it at emfbook.com/Sarika. And the second thing that I have is for health practitioners. So if you're a health practitioner listening to this, well, how do you help your patients or clients apply these things? And how can you recognize someone who maybe is sensitive to EMFs, and how can you support their health? And it turns out that this is a factor that I think, and other doctors that I've interviewed to create this course think is as important as heavy metal exposure, other pesticides, other toxins, and is an environmental toxin you need to look at if you have a holistic approach. So the course is called Electrosmog RX, and it's available at electrosmogrx.com/Sarika. So these are both resources. Whether you're a practitioner or lay person, you will love the book as well. And I appreciate your support.